Hello guys and happy new year. Welcome to my first video of 2017, and what a product I've got to show for you in my first video of the new year, and it's all to do with this baby, the Commodore Amiga 1200. Now if you watch my channel regularly, obviously you know that I'm a massive fan of the Amiga, and if I was pushed, it's a hard choice, but if you asked me to pick my favourite model of the Amiga range, it would probably be the A1200. Now, a lot of that's historical. I did get one of these when they were new, and also I think in the 25 years since the Amiga 1200 first came out, it really has proved itself to be the fans' favourite, and also kind of the hacker's machine of choice as well. Even going back to, like, you know, the late 90s, a lot of people used to rip out the motherboards of these and transplant them into tower cases. Today, if you look at the Amiga forums or Facebook pages, a lot of people do mods on the A1200, and that could be like, you know, custom paint jobs, turning them different colours, even stuff like putting Gotek drives in there and cutting out bits of the casing here to put like displays in to control it, stuff like adding USB ports and HDMI and DVI and all that kind of thing. Really, the Amiga 1200 has been pushed way beyond the original design specification that was set by Commodore back in 1992. So, amazing machine, and if you look at mine, it does look pretty much mint condition. Now my A1200 luckily is still pearly white, looks as good as it did the day that it rolled off the production line, but unfortunately not everybody's Amiga 1200 has survived the years quite as well as mine. And this didn't just affect the Amiga, but a lot of machines that were made back in the day came with a chemical in the casing which was a fire retardant called bromine. And what that does is, over time, it reacts with ultraviolet light and oxygen and tends to turn these old machines into a kind of nasty yellow colour. Now you may have seen that on Amigas. It also affects stuff like the Super Nintendo and the Sega Dreamcast, a couple of examples that spring to mind. Now you can reverse that process with a paste mixture called Retro Bright, which will give you, you know, the original white colour again. But maybe you just want to get a brand new looking case, or you want to do some mods to your Amiga 1200 and don't want to risk, you know, cutting your original casing, or you might not have the skills to do good paint jobs, that kind of thing. There is now a solution that's come along thanks to the guys at a1200.net, and I've got one in my hand here. Now I've got to say a massive thank you to Phil, Marcel, who are a couple of the guys from this project here, who sent me a couple of these cases to show you on my channel. So thanks Phil and Marcel for sending these along. Now I did post a little teaser picture of these underneath my Christmas tree a couple of weeks ago. I was teasing you a little bit because I didn't say, you know, what they were. A lot of people got very excited. What, brand new Amiga 1200s? A lot of people did twig. But what these are is replacement cases for your Amiga 1200. But they do come in these really cool boxes here. Now if you look, there is a little sticker on there that says replacement casing only. You could peel that off though, and theoretically you've got new Amiga 1200 cases. So when stuff like, you know, the A1200 Reloaded, which is a new Amiga 1200 motherboard replacement, comes along with this case, you could really have, you know, a complete new Amiga 1200 that you could, you know, keep in this box, or sell them in this box even. So I do love the packaging it comes in, and if you do buy these from the guys, they also ship it in, like, you know, some extra packaging to make sure that it gets to you in one piece as well. Now in a second I'm going to give you a closer inspection of what these look like and kind of what features come with these new cases, but just quickly I'll remove this from the box here and show you what we've got in here. So if I pull this out, pop the cardboard box down there gently, and take this out of the plastic, you will see that this is pretty much a replica of the Amiga 1200's casing, only it's in this brilliant blue colour. So what the guys do is, these are completely compatible with your A1200 motherboard and keyboard, disk drive and all that kind of thing. All you do is you take your original components out, transplant it into these cases, and then you've got kind of a modern case for your Amiga 1200, and they do them in lots of different colours as well. As you can see, this one's in a rather fabulous blue colour. So they do actually have some improvements over the original casings too. So what I'll do is I'll give you a closer inspection on this, and I'll show you what the Amiga 1200 looks like transplanted into these modern cases. Okay, now that we are up close and personal, you can get a really good look at these replacement Amiga 1200 cases. And my first impression is that these look and feel every bit as good as the original Amiga 1200. I do say feel because if you've ever felt an A1200 case before, you'll know that it's kind of got this matte, kind of textured feel to it. And these feel identical to the original cases, so they've replicated that perfectly. It's got the same feel as an original A1200 in the bits that it needs to. So these are textured up here, but also, like the original A1200, stuff like the Amiga logo here and the bit underneath the badge and around the edges here, these still feel glossy and they're like the original cases. So they've pretty much replicated that 100%, which I think is, a really nice touch. Now, I've got the blue case here on my desk, but there are actually 12 different colours of these cases available from A1200.net. Now, the guys there were generous enough to send me 3 different versions of this A1200 casing. Now, we've got the blue one here, and also a lot of people tend to mod their A1200s into black casing, so you will be pleased to know that you can get this really stealthy looking black colour. And if you ever wanted a see-through Amiga 1200, you can also get this transparent casing too, which I think is really cool. But I think for this video, we're going to stick to the blue one because it does tend to show up a little bit nicer on camera in the tests that I've done. Now, looking at this case, first of all, this is the first time I've had it out the box. A couple of things have struck me about it straight away, and a couple of really nice improvements over the original A1200 casing. But first of all, I'm going to clear up a little bit of confusion about these cases, as I've seen quite a lot of, nonsense posted on the forums and, Facebook groups. These are not 3D printed. These are actually made using factory quality injection molding, just like the original Amiga 1200 cases were. As I've seen some people saying, oh, they're 3D printed. They're not in the slightest. These are, original manufacturing quality. And there's actually 3 different molds that they've used. So we've got the original, the top here, the bottom, and also the trapdoor cover here too. Now, there's no 20-year-old industrial parts used. These are new designs that kind of replica the original Commodore Amiga A1200 case, but also add a few nice modern features that will be very useful if you're using an Amiga 1200 in 2017. Including, the first thing I noticed is these new screws that come with it. Now, one problem that a lot of Amiga 1200 users have is you may have lost your original case screws over time, or down to the rather bad design of the original Amiga 1200, the screws in the back of it were really short and shallow screws, a bit more like these ones here. So what it means is the rest of it used to be held together with plastic clips, which tended to break over time. They've improved that with these new cases and give you these really deep screws. And there's actually some, if we open the case here, you can see there, all the screw holes are made out of brass, so they're a lot more sturdy than the original cases were. So now that we've got it open, I'll show you quickly the bottom of the new A1200 case here. And there are some really, really nice touches in here. Now, I'm going to show you a little closer view of it here, but if you remember the Amiga 1000, the original A1000, the designers of the original Amiga were so proud of their design, they actually signed it like artists would a fine work of art, and they've replicated that in this case. What they've done is actually gone to the original Amiga designers and got them to sign the molds. So that means if you look at the bottom here, we've got guys like RJ Michael, Dave Haney, and Dave Needle have all signed the bottom of these molds. So you've got the original Amiga designers signing the inside of your case, which I think is really, really cool. A really nice touch for Amiga enthusiasts. And one thing that instantly jumped out at me is the new trapdoor cover design. As you can see, it's kind of a grill design with some holes in here. Now, the reason for that is many Amiga 1200 users have got accelerator cards, and if I show you the way I've got my original Amiga 1200 case, put it in frame here, you can see that I've got my trapdoor cover completely removed because I've got an accelerator in there with a bit of extra RAM and a new CPU. And the thing is, a lot of these accelerators tend to run quite warm, and the original design of the trapdoor cover didn't have any ventilation, so it meant that they would tend to overheat. With this new design though, as you can see, cooling shouldn't be an issue with this, as you've got these really big holes here to let the airflow through, which I think is really, really nice. Now, I did mention that they have made some provisions for adding new stuff to your Amiga. One of the things I mentioned was adding USB drives like the GoTech or the HXC, and a lot of people tend to add displays, usually around this part of the Amiga's casing here. So what they've handily done is they've given you some little points in the case that you can make cutouts of and mount the display for your GoTech drive. So there's even some little screw holes here that they've provided too. So all you do is just cut this bit out here, and you've got a nice little mount point there for a little LCD display. Now, some people have said, and you might be able to make it out on camera if I kind of tilt the casing back a little bit, that without that hole cut out, you can actually see where it's meant to be. So yeah, it looks a little bit darker there, doesn't it, on the camera? I will say, this tends to show up a bit more on different colours of the casing. On the white one you can't really see it all that much, but even though you can see it quite clearly in certain lighting on this blue A1200 case, it actually stands out a lot more on camera than it does in everyday life. Looking at it from this angle now where I am, you can't really notice it unless you're really, really looking for it. So, you know, I think that's not really a concern for me. So, you know, in everyday use, you're not even going to spot that really. And looking around the bottom of the case here too, if you want to add some USB ports, you can do that to the right side of the Amiga. And again, you know, they've given you these little points where you can just make little cutouts here, and also screw in the, you know, the Rapid Road, for example, which is one of the common Amiga 1200 USB adapters. There's also the PCM-CIA port on the left side of the case here, and above that there is actually another cutout because some people like to have a compact flash card mounted above that too, so they give you a nice little space to do that. And on the back of the A1200 there is a little port that kind of pops out here. Now the A1200 casing originally had that. If I turn that around and show you it on camera quickly here. So as you can see, that just kind of pops out. You know, you put a little screwdriver in there and take it out. Usually these are just blank, you know, they were labelled expansion on the original casing. But what they actually supply you with is a few little cutouts here. So that means if you want to add stuff like, you know, DVI adapter there, or HDMI, if you've got like, you know, scan doubler or something like that, these just pop into the back of the casing and give you, you know, holes that will actually completely match those ports. Without any kind of white space or anything around it. They also label everything here just like the original casing, so you know they're all labelled exactly in the same way. What a lot of Amiga 1200 owners tend to do is remove the TV modulator, as you know, who uses RF these days. But if you do that on your Amiga 1200 motherboard, you can also use a VGA cable, and they've quite usefully actually made the hole on the back of it a little bit bigger, so a DVI cable will fit in there too. So that is really, really useful, and they've kind of, you know, given you everything that you'd really need in 2017 if you've got, you know, expansions in your A1200. Now I know that some people tend to like having emulation machines inside Amiga casing, and again, this is a really nice way of doing that. They've actually got mounting points here inside the case, as you can see. So what this means is you could mount a Raspberry Pi in here and it would fit perfectly. There's mounts for it and screw holes, and then there's also stuff like a key rail that will let you use the original Amiga's keyboard, and you know, you can mount that in these screw holes here as well. What they've done is measured all of these add-ons that people commonly use, and they're kind of replacement boards like the Raspberry Pi, for example, and give you the exact cutouts and holes that you'll need to mount those in the case. So if you want to do like a, you know, a replacement Amiga 1200 in a modern machine using emulation, then it will look great in this case, I think. So what I'm going to do now is take my A1200 apart, and we're going to put the internals into this case, and we'll see how it all fits together. And here we are, about 10 or 15 minutes later. Really didn't take me very long at all, to be honest. We've now got the Amiga's motherboard, the keyboard, floppy disk drive, the LEDs all mounted into this new blue replacement case, and it really was a very painless procedure. In fact, a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be. Literally, it's a case of opening your old Amiga. You know, the keyboard's not held in any way apart from just sitting into a couple of clips. You want to do like 2 screws on the motherboard and the floppy drive, and that's about it. And then you just transplant the whole lot into this case here, and it all fits really nicely. As you can see, I've got a PCM-CIA to compact flash adapter in the side, and you know, that fits really nicely in the hole. No problems with that. That's a really perfect fit. But there were 1 or 2 little issues that I ran into, really most of which are not the fault of this case at all. It's more third-party stuff, but I'll quickly show you through those in case you've got any of the same expansions I've got. First of all, I need to turn the A1200 over. Now, the first issue I came to was the fact that the trapdoor cover still will not fit on this case, and again, that's not a problem with this casing. It is the same on the original Amiga 1200's case. Now, it's down to my accelerator card, which is an ACA 1230. Because this is actually designed to be used without the trapdoor cover, the CPU is actually really low, and it's kind of flush to the bottom of the Amiga's casing, so that means, you know, same as the original trapdoor cover, this one will not fit on using this accelerator. So as you can see, it just kind of bends. Again, not a problem with the case, and this will be like that with you know, any casing that you put on here. But obviously, accelerators that are designed to be used with the trapdoor cover, I imagine, are a bit more recessed. And I've just stripped the case down quickly and took the floppy drive off and the keyboard just to show you the other slight issue that I ran into. And again, this is not a problem with the case, and it's not really an issue with the expansion that's causing the problem. It's just the Indivision AGA, which is a scan doubler. Now that is quite a common Amiga 1200 peripheral these days. So I thought I'd give this, very slight warning to people that may actually have one of those fitted in their A1200. Now I've got a little breakout cable here that gives me DVI, and as you can see, if I turn it round, if I push that back through there we go. It does line up to this little cover really nicely. The only problem is securing it. Now, because the Indivision, it's got two little mounting holes there, it kind of expects to go through that little hole there that you may be able to see for the screw. So it expects to be mounted kind of at an angle which doesn't line up perfectly with that. If I show you the one that I got from Amiga Kit, that will fit nicely. Again, you've got to put the screws in there. But as you can see, if I lay it in, that screw hole actually goes right through and holds it in place. So if you've got an Indivision AGA with the DVI breakout, it will fit nicely into the hole at the back there, but you are going to have to find another way of securing it. So I imagine a bit of double-sided tape or some hot glue or something would keep that in place. But again, a very minor issue, but I thought I'd point it out just before, if you've got an Indivision AGA in your Amiga 1200, as I know lots of people have, you might want to give that a little bit of thought before, before you get the case and pre-plan that. And the final slight issue I ran into concerns the floppy disk drive eject button, and this is really a bit of reassurance because I've been chatting to Phil about this. Now, what they do offer in the case is they give you a replacement floppy drive eject button, obviously to match the colour of the casing, so you haven't got like an ugly white one popping out the end there. But the thing is, they found since that there are actually 4 different variants of the Amiga's floppy disk drive eject button. As you can see here, the one on my A1200 drive actually has a long bit of plastic that goes all the way back to secure the button in place, which the one they've given me in the case just kind of clips on the front and doesn't have that. So if you've read maybe reports on forums about that, or you've seen other reviews, the good news is the team have identified that that is a problem, and they've worked out there are 4 different versions of the Amiga 1200 floppy disk drive eject button. So anyone that's bought one of these cases so far, any of the Kickstart backers who've got one already, they are actually going to be sending you another 3 of those buttons in the mail over the next month or 2. So no matter which model or variant of the drive you've got, you should at least get one of the buttons that fits it. So I thought I'd just pass it on to clear up any concerns you may have. So I thought I'd quickly show you what the Amiga looks like inside the other cases. Now, I've just popped the keyboard inside the black shell, so you can see, this stealth Amiga, I think I called it before. It does look really cool, actually, and the colour scheme actually works really well with the keys and the casing. And on the back of this one, if I flip it round, there is even a nice little sticker on the bottom of this one too, which looks really cool, very reminiscent of the original Commodore label that was on there. And also something else about these cases I've just spotted is the feet are actually really nice. That might be a bit hard for you to see on the black case, but these are actually a lot more sturdier and cover a lot more surface than the original Amiga 1200 feet, so they should sit quite nicely on your desk. And finally, I thought I'd show you the Amiga keyboard mounted inside the transparent case here to give you a little idea of what it might look like to have a completely see-through Amiga 1200. So yeah, it does look quite trippy, I've got to say. Even looking through the Amiga logo there, you can see the the circuitry on the keyboard controller and the ribbon cable and stuff like that. I imagine this would look really cool with some like LEDs, make it really pimped out. So I am really impressed with this project, I've got to say. Now, the one thing you might be thinking about these different coloured cases is they all look well and good, but what about the keys? Because obviously the keyboard looks the same in all of them. And I do know that some guys do black Amiga mods and actually pinch the keys off Commodore CD-TV keyboards, which are black Amiga compatible keys. Now, first of all, stop doing that because CD-TV keyboards are getting very rare. But secondly, there is now no need to do that because the same guys, A1200.net, behind these Amiga cases are also doing a Kickstarter for Amiga keycap replacements. So that means you can just pop your keys off these and put some different ones on. Now, they also do, obviously, ones that look just the same as the originals if yours have gone a bit yellow and you want some like brand new keys, or they do different coloured ones to match these different coloured cases. So you can make some, really wild, weird and wonderful combinations of coloured keys and coloured cases. So if you want to back that, it's currently running on Kickstarter. Unfortunately, at the time of doing this video, there is only a couple of days left on it. It finishes on Friday the 13th of January, so you haven't got long if you're watching this video when it just comes out. I'll pop a link to their Kickstarter in the video description, but honestly, if you are interested in these cases and modding your Amiga, I'd highly implore you go along and get that backed ASAP. because, you know, we really need to show these guys support on this. And out of all the, you know, new case mods and new case projects I've seen, these are by far the highest quality, and I want to see these guys continue. You know, if this is a success, hopefully they'll do maybe cases for other models of the Amiga. I know lots of people have been asking for those on the forum. It would be great to see, you know, stuff of this quality being produced for other Amiga models, and you know, hopefully you guys, if you're interested in modding your Amiga, you'll support these guys and get your hands on one of these cases. So thank you very much for checking out this video, my first one of 2017. If you've got any questions on this, of course, do leave them in the video description. Don't forget the podcast, The Retro Hour, that comes out every single Friday. This week's episode is all about Team 17, so if you like the Amiga, definitely worth checking out that. Martin Brown, the guy who was behind Team 17 Chatsler, is on it. I'll pop that in the show notes as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next vid.